Welcome to another edition of the Tag1 Team Talk, the vlog and podcast of Tag1 Consulting. I'm Michael Meyers, the Managing Director of Tag1, and today we're celebrating and looking back on 20 years of Drupal. We're really proud to have been a part of Drupal's history, and we're going to be talking to many of the Tag1 team members that have made major contributions and been a big part and long-standing part of the Drupal community. Today I'm joined by Francesco, who is a very well-known, long-time contributor to the platform. Francesco, could you give folks just a brief, overview of, your role in the community, some of the things you've done over the years?
Sure. So, hi everyone. Francesco Placella. My nickname on Drupal.org is Plach, and I've been a member since I think it was 2007, something like that. So almost 14 years now. I think I started working with Drupal 5, it was at that moment. I was running my web agency with a business partner, a dear friend of mine, who's also on the Tag1 team now. And yeah, we were looking for a CMS, and we stumbled upon this very interesting tool that was Drupal. And so basically in the years we started being involved in the community, and we started working on mainly multilingual stuff. It was because at the time there was already work in that area, but it wasn't fully mature. And so there were many projects we were working on that were actually relying on multilingual. So we started becoming involved with that. And by the time D7 was out, I was subsystem maintainer for the language system and the content translation module. And then I stayed involved with that area. I worked on the entity translation and title modules. I authored them, and also more or less at that time I was called by Gabor Hoichi, who had just been appointed as the 8 MI, so the 8 Multilingual Initiative maintainer. And so I was involved also with that. And with the years, we were able to basically complete and take to maturity all the multilingual features of the 8, working and improving on all the fantastic work that was done during the D6 and D7 cycles. And with that, basically, I was involved also in other areas, of course. So I started working on the entity system with a particular focus on the entity form subsystem and the entity storage subsystems. And after the 8 was released, my attention turned to the integration between the content translation systems and revisions. So I did a lot of work also in that area. And then a few years ago, I think it was 2017, I was appointed as provisional framework manager, and then full framework manager after a couple of years. So, and I've been serving as framework managers until a few weeks ago. And that's more or less my journey.
Wow, it's pretty amazing. Do you remember your first commit to Drupal? Was it in multilingual, or do you remember roughly what it was, how it went?
So I'm sure it was multilingual. I remember maybe the first one, one of the first ones was about actually a simple fix about being able to uninstall the locale module. I think it was D7 I think it was D7. So yeah, baby steps. But yeah, I think it was in the multilingual area.
Do you remember the process? Was it like smooth and easy? Like I'm wondering, from first commit to framework manager who oversees all the commits, what was that process like versus what it might be like today? Has a lot changed, or is it pretty much?
Well, it's changed somehow. I mean, at the time, now we have these fantastic merge requests. And at the time, we were still working with batches, but yeah, that's a big news, fairly recent news, actually. So I think most of the people are still familiar with that workflow. But I think the main difference was that we had way less gates and constraints to satisfy before a patch would be committed. For instance, you didn't need to have a full issue summary before a commit. And I think it was really hard at the time to be a committer because, it was probably, there was way less pressure on the contributor. And so basically all the pressure was on the committer. Instead, now we are more, we became better at balancing the work shared between contributors and committers, so that committers can really focus on evaluating the patch with all, or the merge request with all the information already in place.
There was no test harness in 5. Or even in 6, really, sort of the beginning of testing. So yeah, much simpler to create a patch. And
I think in the 7 we already had a patch. So I remember being somehow jarred at the beginning by the requirement of having to provide automated testing, which became, of course, actually one of my favorite requirements once I became a committer. But yeah, I remember the first times I wasn't really that familiar with the concept of automated testing. And this is an example of how being involved in the Drupal community makes you a better developer, a better professional overall, because you get exposed to the cutting edge technology, the cutting edge best practices, and so on. And so, yeah, I remember being jarred by that. And I was kind of wondering, but I'm already providing you a fix. Why do you want me to do more work? But then it took me really a short time to start seeing the advantages of that approach.
There are a lot of people out, open source has become so popular, which is awesome, and it's great to see so many projects cropping up. Looking back on Drupal, we've had this amazing opportunity to see it mature over the years, go from, it was a pretty sizable community, even in the Drupal 5 days, as far as open source projects go. But to see that maturation and the changes that need to take place to scale the platform to where it is today, a lot of governance, a lot of things like testing, it's sort of the nature of the beast. And it's great that it helps people grow, but it has, some friction, some downsides as well. You contributed in so many different areas to core. Is there something that really stands out that you're most proud of, looking back on all these years? Something that you're like, man, yeah, I did that.
Well, I mean, I'm feeling that probably all the contribution to the multilingual subsystem and the content translation and the content translation subsystems are probably the most important things I've worked on. If we keep in mind the effect that they had on the likely effect, because I don't have strict measures about it, but the likely effect on the user base and on the types of projects that were able to adopt Drupal, I think that's probably the work where I provided the most value. Although probably the stuff I'm most proud of is all the entity storage work I've done, because actually it's not, I think, fully complete, at least in the idea that I originally had in mind, because my original plan was to be able to switch from a database schema that was supporting multilingual or revisions or a combination of both or none of them dynamically. Right now we are in a position when you define an entity type, you can pick one of these flavors and the system will already automatically provide a schema for you. And that's already great, although it was kind of painful to get where we are here, where all the updates kind of work. And well, I mean, it was a major source of update bugs at the time, but that they are sorted out. And yeah, I think that's probably something that if we keep building on, will provide even more value in the future. And I think one of the probably not obvious advantages is that it forces you to define all the pieces of data attached to an entity as fields, which in turn opens the possibility to reuse all the incredible features, Drupal features that are built upon fields and entity types. So it was a key decision, architectural decision in the direction of introducing more consistency, because one of the key features of the Drupal 8 cycle was introducing the configuration management system. And that brought consistency in the configuration area. But I think this choice, even if it's not super obvious to regular users, was a key decision in bringing consistency in the content storage area. And so this is probably what I'm most proud of, although, yeah, as I said, probably the work I did that had the biggest impact for the Drupal community at the moment was the multilingual stuff.
What is your, and this is my favorite question, I'm going to put you on the spot here. What is your favorite thing about Drupal as a platform, and what is your least favorite thing about Drupal?
Okay, this is a hard one because there are so many things I love about Drupal, of course. And of course, there are so many things that I don't like about Drupal because you can still make things better, I guess. That's why I've been involved so many years, I guess, and I like to make things better. So I guess one of my favorite things based on the previous experience was the introduction of the configuration management system in Drupal 8, because that was really a game changer in my daily routine at work. It's really completely different from having to manage everything through, well, features does a good job, but I think the configuration management system takes it to the next level. And so, yeah, that's one of my favorite ones. So, of course, the stuff that was introduced in the last years is great, actually, like layout builder, the media. Well, the media improvements we got in recent years are really awesome. And I think those are really one of the keys of the probable success we will have in the future, along with all the workflow and content moderation subsystems. But I think the content management systems, and from a very selfish perspective, it's one of my favorite features, actually. Talking about the least favorite, probably, well, right now we're probably in a slightly different spot, but I must say that, well, historically, one of my least favorite features was actually multilingual stuff. I wasn't really happy about multilingual when I started adopting Drupal, and that's why I got so involved with it. But in time, probably another subsystem that gave me similar vibes, I think, was all the calendar-related stuff, date and calendar. So date has improved hugely over time. I think we're not really there with calendar, but I'm hopeful that we will get there sometime. So yeah, I think it's not like I hate it, but yeah, I think we could do better in that area.
A very open source answer. I didn't like multilingual, so I got in and I changed it, and I made it better. And years later, was in control of it. That's pretty cool. What do you think Drupal needs most? What do you think is sort of the game-changing feature or something that's really missing that it needs to have?
So I'm not saying anything new here because Dries has already pointed this out in many of his keynotes, but I think one of the secrets of Drupal success has been the dedication of the community and its ability to basically implement so many features in so many directions that basically make Drupal hugely flexible. I think probably one of the things that Drupal needs the most to keep being successful is more involvement by agencies and especially large ones and large organization in the funding of people working on Drupal, because Drupal has grown to such a size that the model we had for so many years, I think, is starting to be a little inadequate, I think, because the code base is so much larger and the features we're building are so much more powerful and all-encompassing. And so just maintaining those is a burden. And so the core maintainer team is doing a fantastic work, but it's proving challenging to find more people that is able to perform that work, because doing that only based on voluntary work is really hard. And so I think that's an area where we need work. And instead, if we are talking about features, I think that continuing on improving on the workspaces area will bring a lot of value to enterprise level customers. And I think that's an area that will really make Drupal shine. And if we think about ambitious projects, of course, still improving on the JSON API abilities and all the support for decoupled systems is going to keep Drupal relevant. And I also think that all the automated updates initiative is going to be really important to be able to still competing with the rest of the CMS ecosystem. So yeah, I think those are the most important ones. Although, yeah, I still have this favorite of mine that is media. I think media is great, and the improvements that were made over the V8 cycle were great, and I think there's still room for improvement there. And if we do the right moves, like fully integrating the media library and building upon it, we are really going to reap the benefits. And I think we are also in a good place with all the improving the Drupal UX, because I think that's really important direction. A new, better looking theme, a new administrative theme, all those are key improvements that I think are really going to provide a lot of value.
Cool. What has been the best thing about being part of Drupal?
I can see at least two best things. So one, as I was mentioning at the beginning of this call, was the way I was able to grow, to learn new things, to become better, and at the same time to test my abilities as I went on by providing code that was better and better looking at my eyes, learning new tricks, and also being just able to express my creativity. So seeing basically that all the ideas that I had that I couldn't express during my day job were still possible to express in a more welcoming environment or more flexible environment. And the other best thing is probably the complementary thing. So that by doing this, I was able to know a lot of people that became friends of mine, that provide me a different perspective on so many issues, that overall made me a better developer and hopefully a better human being overall. So I think these probably are the two best things that happened to me by joining the Drupal community.
At this point, I'm sure that there are too many people to thank, that you work with on a day-to-day basis. But looking back to when you first got started, is there, one or two or a few people that you want to say, hey, thank you for helping me, get that commit in, for introducing me to Drupal or...
So yeah, as you were saying, there are so many that probably it would take me a call like this just to name them all, but probably the most relevant person in my Drupal involvement was Ned Catchpole, because he was there from the very beginning. He was one of my mentors at the very beginning, along with Nejo Rogers and son, Daniel Kudvian. Those are the three key people that got me involved in the project. And as time went by, Net has been a constant presence in my relationships with the Drupal community. And so I think my biggest thanks go to him, although, of course, another person that I cannot avoid to mention is Gabor Hoichi, who basically helped me do a lot of work in the multilingual area, who hang out with me during DrupalCons and helped me feel at home while I was still new to the project and I was knowing almost no one. So, and also WebChick, she was the first committer I seriously interacted with, and she was WebChick, you know her. So she was awesome, always providing constructive feedback and always encouraging me. So she was really a key person in my involvement of the project. And then, of course, I probably need to thank the committer team, because they were also a huge source of learning for me. I think I learned much more than I actually I taught while I was on the team. And so I really thank them for giving me the opportunity to be part of that amazing team.
Wow, thank you. Really appreciate you joining us today, giving us your perspective and looking back on 20 years. Look forward to seeing you again on a future talk. Have a great day.
You too. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, that was awesome. Thank you. Take care, Francesco.
Bye-bye. Thanks.
Bye.